Right guys, today we're going to be doing an LS430 2003 to 2005. This is going to be for use with the automatic gearbox, and it is a completely standalone harness. So let's get into it. Right, as I said, this is going to be for an LS430 2003 to 2005. That means it came with the 6-speed automatic gearbox behind this particular setup. And obviously this customer is retaining the 6-speed automatic, so we can see we've got all our gearbox wiring over there for the 6-speed auto box. It is a completely standalone harness, so it'll work on any particular vehicle you want. Doesn't really matter what it is. It comes with its own fuse box. It can be powered up and everything will run from there. As you can see, it's a completely brand new harness with our modular design on it. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go through the build process and show you guys exactly what goes into making one of these and what it looks like underneath all of that heat shrink. So let's do that now, and I'll be back in a second. Right, so yeah, now you can see exactly what goes through the process of building one of these. Obviously, we've gone through the modular harnesses that come with the harness as well. So what are we going to be doing today? Well, as per usual with all of our videos, we're going to be going through the layout first of all. So we're going to start here, work our way around the engine, showing the customer exactly where everything goes and connects in. Then we're going to come back and we're going to go look at the plugs that are attached to the fuse box. And I've got our little sheets over there to go through every single wire that's on there. Once we've done that, then we're going to come into the testing, and that's going to be split into two sections, one with the ignition on and one with the engine actually running. So that's going to be a two-parter with that one over there. So without further ado, let's get into the layout of the harness, and let's start right over here at the ECU side. So as you can see down here, we've got 3 ECU plugs for the engine harness, 1, 2, 3. Then we've got 2 ECU plugs for what I call the body side, and that makes its way and it runs into the fuse box over there. Coming out of there, we've also got the pedal connector. So again, that is all labeled for you guys. And again, this is a Hilux pedal, which is what the customer is going to be using in this case over here. So making sure that that all works correctly. All right. Coming out of the harness over here is the part of the harness that goes into the fuse box. And obviously that's supplying all the powers and everything that are required for the actual engine harness itself. Then we have the customer plugs there. And the other one is over there, which again, we'll go through after we've been through the whole layout. All right. So moving down from here, we're going to carry along until you see we get to our grommet. So this is a firewall grommet that we put on for you guys. We have put a piece of SCL heat shrink on there. What we don't do is shrink it down though, because we want to give you guys the opportunity to move the grommet wherever you see fit in your particular application. Once it's ready where you want it, then you can heat that up, and that will be a glue lined or epoxy lined heat shrink, and that'll seal up the whole harness from any water coming inside the cab. Moving along up until there, and then you'll see we get to our usual T-piece molded boot over here. And so the harness is going to make its way down there and obviously make its way around the back. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to hop off this way, then we'll come back and carry on with what's going out there. So first thing that's popping out here is going to be our ignition harness. Okay, so again, we've put these on a sub harness for you guys, multitude of reasons. One, if you ever wanted to swap to an aftermarket ECU, you can simply unplug all the coils and swap these out for different coils if you so desired. Also, when it comes to servicing time, you can actually just unbolt all of these coils and pull them all out and just connect that one plug and go from there. So remember, what we're trying to do here is these connectors themselves have a very short span in terms of connects and disconnects as opposed to the DTM connectors. So what we're trying to do is avoid you guys taking out these connectors. That'll avoid them breaking over time. And again, so you can disconnect that one over there, unbolt all of these connectors, pull the whole lot out, change the spark plugs, put them all back in again, and you haven't had to take out all 4 different connectors from there. Okay, moving further along to here, and then we get to the middle over here, and then we go into the cam sensor. So this is for the left bank. So remember, looking at the engine, always from the driver's side or the cab position, this is the left and that is the right bank. We've got cylinder 1, 3, 5, and 7 over here. On the other side, we've got 2, 4, 6, and 8. And obviously, when we go through all the injector wiring, you'll see that's all labeled. But also on our ignition as well, you can see that is all labeled. So there you go, ignition 5. And obviously, that one is then ignition 7 over there. So let's see if I can get it to focus. There you go. Right, and again, same with the injectors. You can see that's all labeled as injector 7. And then you've got let me try and see if I can get injector 3 over there. Okay. But yeah, so moving along there, and you'll see it's labeled VVL. So remember, these cam sensors are just used for the ECU to monitor the degree that the cam has been rotated by the oil control valve. And that's your VVT-i system. So obviously it's advancing and retarding the camshaft. ECU wants to know whatever it's commanding is being achieved and done, obviously. So that's what these are for. So we've got one on here and we've got one on the other side, which we'll go through in a minute. But that is not used to synchronize the engine in terms of when it's sparking or injecting. So we'll get to the cam sensor that's at the front that actually does that over there. So moving along from there, and it's going to pop around through here, and it's going to break out here by injector 1, and then it's going to go to your oil control valve. So again, labeled as OCV, oil control valve. As I said earlier, this is your oil control valve for your VVT-i. So this is what's advancing and retarding your camshaft. This is what's doing the work over there. Moving along to over there, and obviously I've just used this as a mounting point, so you can put that over there with a cable tie, P-clip, whatever you feel is the best way to do it. And coming off of there is our cam sensor. So again, this is the one that's actually checking the position of the engine. This is based on the cam wheel over here. So obviously that does not move like the VVT-i does. So that stays in a constant position. So this is where it is using to check engine position for fully sequential injection and ignition. Moving along through there, and you'll see we've got a mounting point over there. Now, these are not the genuine clips for the mounting point, but obviously these are ones I've just found that do the job for now. And you've got one there and you've got one there that keeps the harness out of the way of anything that could be over here, belt-wise, etc. After that, when it comes down here, it's going to break out into 3 sections in this case. So what it's going to do is if you follow this one down here, it's going to go through there. You can see nicely through there, pop out over there, and that is our crank sensor. So again, everything is labeled for you, so you can see CRK over there. The little one you see breaking out here is actually going to our oil pressure switch, and that's over there. Now, in this case, the customer is going to have an LS430. He is going to have this mid/rear sump, whatever you want to call it. He is going to have this particular type of oil filter housing. What we don't want to do is limit you guys. If you guys want to swap to a front sump and then change this oil filter housing to the one that comes over there, that's why we break the oil up over here. So you can take it either to there or to there. It really makes no odds. And if you are using this one, you can actually push it through that hole, follow along with the crank wiring out the bottom there, and plug in over there. That'll keep it nice and away from the crank pulley over there, so you don't have any issues there. Last one that pops down over there, which can also actually go through here and come out here if you want, but basically that pops down over there and that goes to your Lambda sensor. So if you guys have seen an original 3UZ harness, you'll obviously know that that Lambda plug usually pops up through there by the exhaust, and out the back of the harness comes it and it plugs in over there. Now obviously that requires you guys to fit heat shields in that, which you don't always do. So what we've done is we bring this out over here so it can run along the bottom, and most importantly stay well clear of the exhaust, both the connector and the harness itself, so it'll get away from heat. That should make it last a whole lot longer than what the standard one would if you didn't have the shield in there to protect it from the exhaust heat. Okay. Right, so that is this section over here. Let's pop back to the back of the harness and let's start looking at what's popping out over there. So Out of the back directly here, there are quite a few things that pop out, so we'll go through them one by one. So first of all, nice and easy to see here is the ground. So that bolts into the M6 bolt that you see over there. Right, so that is really nice and straightforward. Next up is our sub harness, and I call it the sub harness because it goes underneath. Obviously, most of these are sub harnesses, but it goes underneath, and what I'll do is I'll show you a photo of what that looks like. So you'll see it goes to the starter motor and it goes to the 2 knock sensors, and you can see that these, with the 3UZ 6-speed, it actually comes with wideband knock sensors, not narrowband ones. Okay, right, so back over here again. So we've done ground, we've done sub harness there. So next up is going to be our injector harness. All right, so this actually incorporates not only the injectors, but also the ACIS system. So again, there's a vacuum solenoid valve underneath the intake here, and that plug is all included in there. At the bottom in the description, I'm going to have a whole load of links for videos with things like the ACIS system, things like how to install the injector harness underneath the inlet manifold, etc. So please feel free, if you want to go down to the description, have a look down there. Tons of useful videos for you there. But the injector harness goes underneath the V-bank, pops along through there, and it pops out on each corner here. So there's this one, and this injector 1, 3, 5, and 7. And moving around to over here, you can see we've got injector 8, 6, 4, and 2 over there. So again, those are really nice and easy, simple and straightforward. Most importantly, obviously, is the fact that you can remove the entire intake manifold, bottom and top half, with all the fuel rails and the injectors still connected by just disconnecting this one plug. Okay, that means you don't have to undo each and every single injector plug. And again, as we said, the reason for that is obviously, again, these are standard connectors. They only have a very limited lifespan of connect and disconnects. So again, DTM plug, way much more of a lifespan. Rather disconnect that, pull the whole thing up, and you don't need to disconnect these standard connectors. Okay. Right, so let's pop around and see what else we've got, because I think the last little section there is going to be our gearbox harness. So again, that pops down over there. You'll see we've got our input speed, or what they call NCO, or overdrive clutch speed. So that's the one at the front of the gearbox. Obviously, we have our selector plug over there. So that's going to be the one that goes on that side of the gearbox. So this speed sensor is on this side, selectors on that side. And then moving down, we've got our solenoid plug. Again, everything labeled for you guys. So it should just bend that over there. There you go, solenoid. And then lastly is the output speed sensor, or SP2 as they call it. And again, that is on the left-hand side of the gearbox, all the way at the back. Okay, so speed sensor here, selector there, and then solenoid and SP2 right next to that almost. Okay, so that is that section over there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move over to the other side, because the harness now makes its way around, and we'll be breaking out over there on the other side. So moving along to here now, you'll see the harness comes along here, and you'll see there you can obviously mount it with a P-clip on there. And again, there's a bunch of mounting points like down over here. You can use a P-clamp or whatever to hold it all in place. But first thing that breaks out over here is going to be our ignition for the right bank. So again, you can see labeled IG and R. Again, this is going to be ignition 8, 6, 4, and 2. And you can see that's all labeled for you. Ignition 2 there, ignition 8 over there, you can see clearly. Again, same as other side, not going to go through it. Obviously, you can just disconnect that, pull all the coils out, change spark plugs, do a whole service without having to disconnect one coil. Moving along further, and you'll see we break out in the middle here again, and it's going to go to the cam sensor for the right bank. So again, exactly the same as the other side. This is just for the right bank, and this is obviously measuring the cam rotation as per what the VVT-i is trying to achieve. Again, this is labeled as a VVR. Okay, so that's what this one is over here. Moving along, and we're going to break out here by injector 2, and it's going to go off to our throttle plug. So again, we put the throttle on a sub harness, mainly because you can actually use the two different types of throttles, whether it be the 3UZ 5-speed, which is this one over here that has the 4-pin TPS plug and the 2-pin throttle motor, or like this one, which is the actual 6-speed throttle, which has just the 6-pin plug on the one side over there. So again, you can swap them out if you can't get a hold of one of this particularly, and we can just make you the harness that matches your correct throttle. We then also have Coolant Temp, so you can see CLT, that's for the ECU. We also have Temp over here. Now that is actually for you guys inside the vehicle in case you want to use an aftermarket gauge for coolant temperature. We just give you this wire so you have the ability to do that if you want. If you don't want to, you can just tuck this away. It's not really going to affect anything at all. I'm going to go through where it comes out at the fuse box when we go through all the plugs over there. Next up, we got the oil control valve for the right bank. Plug straight in there, no dramas with that. And then coming out here, we then have our mass airflow sensor. Right, so that is a mass airflow sensor that goes into your airbox. We've given you plenty of room in case you need to move it around, especially with a lot of different setups. You're not always going to have the same length. It might be in a different place depending on your swap. So we give you that functionality by adding a bit of length on there for you guys. Moving along down to over here, and we're going to have our last two sections over there. We break out down at the bottom here, and we're going to break out for our alternator connector. So you can see there is our alternator connector over there. Moving along down from there, and you'll see we have our our Lambda Bank 2 connector as well. So again, this is the long one over here. So do remember, guys, in relation to the 3UZ, the right bank Lambda sensor, this is bank 1 sensor 1. This has a long cable, and the wiring is different between the right bank and the left bank, okay? So just be careful about that. You can't use this one with a long wire on the left bank. The one on the left bank is a short wire. The one on the right bank is a long wire, and they are not interchangeable unless you change the wiring at the plug, okay? But obviously I don't recommend that. Just stick to the correct one that you have there. And then I think I do actually have all the Denso part numbers. These are Denso Lambda sensors that I've replaced it with that are reasonably priced, and they seem to work really well. I have no issues with them whatsoever. And actually the MAF that you see above there, also a Denso part number as well. And I'll put them down in the bottom in the description. I have a whole list of parts for you guys if you want to purchase it. The only thing I would say about this alternator harness is obviously this is from a LS430 5-speed. So we have our 3-pin oval plug on here. Now in this case, because it's an LS430 6-speed, the customer is actually going to have the 4-pin plug, okay? So just a note on that. The LS and the GS, they have that 4-pin plug on the 6-speed 3UZ generations, okay? Be careful because the SC430 still retains that 3-pin oval connector all the way up to 2012. As far as I know, on what I've seen so far, they didn't change the alternator plug for the second generation or the 6-speed SC430, only for the GS and the LS. And to make matters more complicated, this 4-pin plug also comes on a crown, but a crown, the way they control the alternator is very different. All 4 wires go to the ECU, apart from one, but the ECU actually controls the alternator. Whereas the LS and the GS, you'll see here that there's actually only 3 wires going to it. Okay, so again, it's still only having the same 3 connections that you would have on a 3UZ 5-speed alternator, just they're using the 4-pin plug rather. But you can't swap a crown alternator onto a GS or a LS430, because if you try and plug the plug in, it's just not going to work correctly, and the alternator is going to charge way high, like 18 volts or something like that. Okay, so yeah, just be super careful about that, and make sure you have the correct alternator for your setup, especially when we get into the 6-speed models. Right, so that's pretty much everything of the layout. Hopefully that's relatively straightforward. As you can see, everything is labeled for you guys. I've got a bunch of videos down below on things like how to install the injector harness, how the ACIS works, etc. And obviously you need to install the knock sensor harness under the intake anyway. So you're going to do all of that together at the same time. And then last little tip for you guys is, while you've got the intake manifold off, that little vacuum solenoid valve that's underneath there, you can test that by giving it 12 volts and ground, okay? You want to hear it click. If it doesn't click, obviously it is directional, or polarity sensitive is the proper term. So if it doesn't work one way, you can try it the other way, which way you can have the 12 volts and the ground around, okay? But yeah, if that doesn't click, then it's time to replace that while you have everything off, because it can be nothing more frustrating than getting everything on, starting up the engine, and you see what happens when I start the engine up. You're going to see this little valve closes like that. You're going to get all the way there. Everything's going to be in nicely buttoned down. Start the engine up. That's not going to turn over. So I always advise to check that while you got the intake off. It's 5 seconds, and it could save you a lot of headache and hassle. Right, so again, super simple and straightforward. And as I said, the next thing I'm going to do as part of the layout is we're going to go through the 2 connectors over there. Now, first of all, the 9-pin connector, if you've watched any of our other videos, you're going to know this like the back of your hand. It's a pretty standard connector we put pretty much on every single harness. And then this one over here is where we have the OBD2 connector and a lot of the sort of gearbox wiring, if you will. Okay. So basically what we want to do now is, starting with the 9-pin plug, because that is the most common one that we have over there. Pin number 1 is going to be red, and it's going to be a 14 gauge wire. Now this wire is the permanent 12 volt supply. Okay. Now the ECU requires a permanent 12 volt supply, and that's why that is a permanent 12 volt supply. If you do not connect it to a permanent 12 volt supply, what's basically going to happen is any diagnostic codes, any long-term fuel trims, anything like that is going to be reset every time you turn the key off, okay? So don't connect that to an ignition, connect it to a permanent 12-volt source, and obviously that would then mean that your ECU retains its memory in terms of diagnostic codes, long-term fuel trims, etc., etc. All right, it's going to make diagnosing any issues incredibly difficult if you connect that to an ignition 12 volts, because every time you turn the key off, it's going to wipe the codes and you're going to be chasing your tail for ages. So please make sure permanent 12 volts, not ignition 12 volts. Number 2 is going to be black with a yellow traces. That's this one you see over here, black with a yellow, and that is your starter signal. Really nice and simple. That just requires a 12 volts. And that'll be fed into there. Remember, that's not actually going to the starter solenoid. There is a starter relay in here because we do have the neutral start switch wired up. So this engine harness will not start unless it is in park or neutral, okay? So again, just be aware, that's not going to the starter motor. That's why it's only a little 20 gauge or 0.5 millimeter squared wire. It's not going there, it's just activating a relay. The relay is then taking care of the starter solenoid, and that power comes from the big, thick red wire that you've got over there. Next up is going to be number 3, and that's going to be yellow with a green tracer. So that's going to be this one that you see over here. Hopefully you can see it over there. Now that one is connected to our temp wire. Remember I said about the temp wire that we have over here? The one I've got connected into a temporary temperature sensor over there. Now I've got it connected to my little device. Reason being is that it's going to translate the MPX of a Toyota dash for me, and it's going to make the coolant temperature gauge work. So at least I know that that yellow with the green wire is connected to the correct place. Next up is going to be number 4, which is going to be our gray wire. Now in this case, obviously I've disconnected that because that is our fuel pump. Now that can be taken literally directly to your fuel pump. If you have like more than one fuel pump for whatever reason, or you feel that it's not enough power, you can just use that to trigger a relay close to your fuel pump. But that should be perfectly adequate to take directly to your fuel pump and run your fuel pump from there. Now the ECU is controlling the fuel pump in this setup. I do, again, down below have a link to the Lexus fuel systems and how they work. So again, you can watch that. It's really, really useful information. Some things catch people out, like the fact on these ones, they don't actually prime when you turn the ignition on. So a lot of guys get confused by that. That's perfectly normal. It only comes on when it receives a starter signal. So okay, when you're cranking, and it'll keep running as long as it's receiving a crank signal. So it knows the engine is rotating. As soon as the engine stops rotating, it cuts off the fuel pump. Unless obviously you kill the ignition, then it'll cut off the fuel pump as well, okay? Next up is going to be number 5. So that's going to be yellow with a red tracer. So that again is down over there. So hopefully you can see there by my finger. Now that is a check engine light. Now we do also put an LED inside the fuse box over there. But in this case, I have got it connected to my dash, and it's going to display in the corner over there. One little tip with these particular ECUs, the 6-speed ones, and if you've seen any of my other 6-speed videos like on the IS200s, etc., you'll notice that on the dash with the check engine light, it's dim, but the LED is bright. So these ECUs are designed to obviously light up an LED, not an incandescent bulb. So if you have an incandescent bulb, you either have to live with it being very dim, or you're going to have to switch it out for an LED. If you don't have a check engine light already and you're adding one in, just get an LED for that particular one just to make sure it stays bright. But you'll see when I turn the ignition on as part of the testing, that one's bright and that one is fairly dim when you put it into relation with all the other lights over there. Right, next up is going to be number 6, and that's going to be a solid yellow color. So again, that is over there. That is our tacho signal. So that is the rev counter signal coming from the engine ECU itself. In this case, I'm taking it straight to the dash. Again, for the same principle, just want to make sure that the yellow wire is connected to tach, and so we'll see the tachometer go up and down when we start the engine up. Now, do remember that is giving off a 4-cylinder signal. So although it's a V8, it's a 4-cylinder signal. So do bear that in mind if you guys are using aftermarket dashes. Don't set it to 8-cylinder, set it to 4-cylinder, otherwise it won't work correctly. Next up is going to be number 7. That's going to be black with a red tracer, and that is our ignition wire. So obviously this is what turns everything on. Okay, so this one you are going to connect to an ignition 12-volt source. And just to be aware, if you guys are using a key barrel for your ignition source, something that catches a lot of people out is ignition barrels have 2 ignition 12-volt sources, if I can say that. One's called accessory and one's called ignition. Now, that's where the problem lies. Accessory loses its 12 volts when you turn the key to the start position. What that basically means is if you connect that black with a red wire to the accessory feed, every time you move the key to the start position to crank the engine over, what's going to happen is the ECU is going to shut down and the engine's not going to start, and you're going to end up scratching your head like mad, because every time you let go of that key, obviously everything is going to come back on again. You're going to see the check engine light on in the fuse box or on your dash or whatever, and you're going to think everything is fine. But what's happening is the second you turn the key to the start position, ECU is shutting down, fuse box is shutting down, everything is shutting down. So when you are looking for that signal from a key barrel, nice and easy, move the key to the ignition position, find the wire that does 12 volts, turn the key off, 12 volt goes off, turn the key on, 12 volt goes on, boom, that's an ignition feed or an accessory feed. Next step, just move the key to the start position and make sure that the 12 volts remains. If the 12 volts falls away, you've got accessory, find the next wire that has ignition 12 volts, okay? Right, so that is the ignition feed. Next up is going to be number 8, and that is pink with the blue. And you can see I've got pink with the blue in there. And that is going to be our charge light or our battery light or alternator light or whatever you guys want to call it. Effectively the light that tells you whether the alternator is charging, okay? So hints and tips, that is a ground, so it gives out a ground. So if you're going to use an LED, obviously 12 volts to the other side of the LED, ground goes to our pink with the blue wire. Second point, I've seen on older vehicles, so it's not going to apply really in this case, because this is a 2005 plus Hilux this is going into, but on the older vehicles, when you have an incandescent bulb and there's no sort of diode inside the cluster, there have been instances where they've actually backfed through the alternator light back into the fuse box and actually kept it alive, okay? So just bear that in mind. So if you have an older dash with an incandescent bulb, if you can either change the light out for an LED, so a lot of times you can now, you can buy an LED replacement bulb for your incandescent bulb. If not, you need to fit a diode in to stop any feedback. And this really only applies to much older clusters and much older vehicles, seems to be the case with this one. But if you're unsure, just fit that diode on there as well. It also keeps the regulator on the alternator on, and it causes it to burn out very quickly. So if your alternator goes dead in like 6 months after you've installed everything, just check that. It may be that's keeping it alive and causing it to burn out. Next up is going to be number 9, and that is yellow with a black, and that is oil pressure. So again, that one's connected directly next to that one. So what this is doing, it's translating via MPX, and it's going to cause our battery light, which is over there, and our red oil pressure light over there to light up when I put the ignition on. Now that is just your oil pressure switch, so that is just connected to over there, okay? Nice and straightforward, nothing complicated. It gives out a ground exactly like the check engine light, but in this case, it doesn't go to the ECU or anything at all. Well, neither does the alternator light, so you don't have to worry about backfeeding or anything like that. Just connect it straight to there, straight to your dash if it has oil light. If you need to create an oil light, I just get an LED, they're much better. But if you need to use your dash and it's got that, you don't have to worry like you do with the alternator light, whether it's going to backfeed in, which is nice and easy. Okay, so that's the 9-pin plug. Again, pretty straightforward and standard. If you've seen any of our other videos, that's the millionth time you've heard that explanation of all those wires over there. Moving on to the next plug, which is this one over here. It's a 12-pin plug, nice and simple. It's got the OBD2 connector in. Okay, and most importantly, we actually have a terminating resistor inside the fuse box for the CAN wires. So remember, the 3UZ 6-speed uses CAN, not Toyota's old MPX. This actually uses proper CAN to receive the data on the OBD2 machine and all of that. So looking at our 12-pin plug over here, pin 1, pin 4, pin 7, pin 8, and pin 11 are just related for the OBD2 connector, so you don't need to worry about that. That's just so you can plug in and do your diagnostics. Let's start with number 2. Number 2 is going to be white with a blue, so you can see white with a blue over there, and that is for your brake switch. Now, for the standard Lexus system, they use a 4-wire brake switch. So basically the ECU knows when the brakes are pressed, but also when they're not pressed, okay? And it uses this for cruise control. And you'll see, because this engine harness is staying in auto, we're actually giving the functionality to use cruise control. So that'll all be part of this harness. So having that brake system work correctly is important. And so what we do is we take care of it via a relay that gives us the signals that we need. And all we require you to do is basically supply 12 volts to that white with the blue. That will then cause the relay to switch over, which will then supply 12 volts to one instead of the other. And that keeps the ECU happy. Okay, so again, nice and simple, just needs 12 volts on your press brakes. You can either get it from your brake switch if your brake switch does it by 12 volts, or find one of the feeds that goes to the lights. And remember that that is obviously not what is connected to the ECU, so don't worry about like blowing up the ECU. This just activates the relay. The relay then fuses back to the ECU depending on what connection you have. So all fused, don't worry about it. Just feed that 12 volts whenever you press the brakes. All right. Next up is going to be number 3, and that's going to be orange. So you can see orange over there. Now that is shift down. Okay, so if you are aware of the 3UZ 6-speed models, the 3UZ 5-speed models didn't really have any with shift up, shift down, not that I can think off the top of my head. I know the GS400 in America, which was the 1UZ VVT-i, that had shift up, shift down, along with obviously the GS300 that had shift up, shift down as well. For some reason, the 3UZ 5-speed, they didn't include that on those particular models. Well, not that I've seen so far, I stand to be corrected. But on the 3UZ 6-speed, they are all Tiptronic. So again, we are installing this functionality with this particular setup, so you're not losing that functionality there. So number 3 is orange. That's going to be shift down. Now that requires a ground signal. Okay, so if you're going to install buttons on your steering wheel, or if you're going to install a shifter that you can then obviously move to the side and then it's got plus and minus, just make sure that shifter has an input for the plus and minus. Make sure that's ground, and then you're going to connect that to orange for shift down. And you'll see further down here, number 6, yellow is shift up. Okay, so again, shift down, shift up. They are grounded, so the ECU requires a ground signal for those over there, so make sure that that is the case. Next up number here is going to be 5, and that is red with a yellow wire, and that's CCS or cruise control switch. So again, simple. It's one wire. You take it to a Toyota cruise control switch, which you can find in an IS300 or an LS430 or whatever you want from there. You can use one of those. That will then give you the full functionality of cruise control. Okay. Other side of that switch just goes to earth. The switch is just a bunch of resistance values that obviously tell the ECU what's going on. So really nice and simple. If you want to retain cruise control, just get the switch from a Toyota or a Lexus, plug our wire into one side, plug ground into the other side, done. All right. Then we've already gone through number 6, which is the yellow shift up. And then we've got number 9, which is black with a red. So there's our black with a red over there. And that is reverse. That's going to give you 12 volts when the gearbox is in reverse. Okay, so remember, this selector only goes park, reverse, neutral, drive. That's the only 4 positions of movement that you have available to you on the 6-speed gearbox. Okay, and that one will give you 12 volts when it's in reverse, so you can use that to power your reverse lights, which you do need. Number 10 is going to be blue with a red. All right, now then, this is the manual / sports mode. So if you've seen a shifter in a 3UZ 6-speed or even the LS460s and stuff like that, you'll see the shifter goes park, reverse, neutral, drive, then it goes sideways and it tells you it's in sports mode, manual mode. Then obviously you can go plus and minus on the shifter, so moving it backwards and forwards. That blue with the red wire, whenever that gear shifter is moved to the side, that blue with the red wire gets 12 volts. Okay, 12 volts, not ground, 12 volts. And that then activates the manual mode, which then allows you to shift up and shift down when you provide the ground signals to the orange and the yellow wire, okay, respectively, whether shift up or shift down. So do pay close attention to that. Blue with the red, to put it in manual mode, gets 12 volts. The orange and the yellow, which is the shift up and shift down, they get a ground signal. Okay, so 12 volts to put it into manual mode, grounds to shift up and shift down. Okay. Right, so after that, the last one we have is number 12. That is a white wire, so a nice straightforward white wire. Now, this is for European only 3UZ 6-speeds, okay? Not US, not Japanese, none of that. European only. That is a kick down switch, and that would have been in your vehicle originally. And what you can do basically is you can take that, and again, that is a ground fed switch. So ground on one side, our white wire to the other side, and you basically put it at the back of your pedal. I will check, because obviously part of the remap, I think we do change the software. I do put it in just in case, but I will double check that with the guys and make sure that I am correct. But yeah, European only models had a kick down switch on there. Okay, so again, if this is going out to a US customer, you'll see that white wire will not be there, because that wouldn't be applicable for a US or a Japanese 3UZ 6-speed or even 3UZ 5-speed. I don't know why they decided to give Europe a kickdown switch, but they did it with all of them. I think both the 1UZ VVT-i and the 3UZ as well, all the European models. Don't know why. You can ask Japan. But yeah, so that is basically it. So those are the 2 plugs that the customers are going to connect inside their vehicle. So as you can see, just as an overview, you kind of only need 4, power, ignition, fuel pump, start signal. Then the whole thing is going to run. Everything else is things like for gauges, like alternator, oil light, coolant temperature, you know, shift up, shift down, go into sports mode, etc., etc. Those don't need to be connected. They're nice, but they don't need to be connected. So only 4 wires to get it started. Power, ignition, fuel pump, start signal. Nice and easy. Okay. Right, so what I'm going to do now is we're going to move over to the testing. So that means with the ignition on and the engine running. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get everything ready, go through the testing, come back, and then we will video the testing. So give me a minute and I will see you now. Right guys, so now we're going to be back for the testing of the harness, and as I said earlier, it's broken up into 2 sections, one with just the ignition on, that top section over there, and one with the engine running, that section over there. So what I'm going to do first is go through the entire list, tell you everything we're going to test. We'll jump into the ignition testing, and then we'll move on to the actual engine running testing from there. I just let it run for a little bit because we need to see the coolant temperature come up on the dash, as that's part of the testing when we go through there. So what are we looking first of all with the air, just the ignition on? We're looking for the check engine lights. We want to make sure that the LED appears on the fuse box and on the cluster. And as I said, the cluster will be a bit dim compared to the rest of the lights. That's perfectly normal because it is designed to work with LEDs, not normal bulbs. We're also going to look at the charge light and the oil pressure light. So that's going to be, the charge light's going to be over there, and then the oil pressure light's going to be over there. Once you put the ignition on, they will come live. Obviously, when we get to the running part of the test, they'll go off just to prove that they are actually working. Next up is going to be OBD2 machine. So we're just going to quickly pop over here and make sure that we're seeing live data on the machine, which we should do, as I've tested that already. And then while we're in there, we're going to test the fuel pump relay. So that's going to be really straightforward. Once we've done that, I'm going to get all the correct data on the data list up. So we're going to be testing the brake switch, and then we'll move over to the transmission part of the ECU on the OBD2 machine. And then we'll be testing the gear selector. So what I'm testing is if park, reverse, neutral, drive appears on the ECU to make sure that that is correct. So there's correct wiring on the selector. I'm also going to provide power to the manual / sports mode. And I'll be testing the shift up, shift down, because I can see the live data on here. It'll tell me whether they're activated or not. Okay, so that is the whole section with just the ignition on. Relatively straightforward. Gear selector takes a little bit of a while because we've got a couple of things to go through. Next up on the engine running side is going to be starter circuit or neutral start switch. So as I said before, the neutral start switch is wired up as per standard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the selector from park to reverse. We're going to try and start it by touching the black with the yellow wire with 12 volts. It won't crank over. Then I'm going to move it back into park again, touch the 12 volts, and she should start right up. So that's basically what we're looking for effectively. Okay. Once we've done that, we're going to move over to the engine here, and what we're looking for is this little ACIS valve to make its way down like so. So it should do that a couple of seconds after it starts. Next up is drive-by-wire test. Well, pretty self-explanatory. All we're basically going to do is just rev the engine with the pedal here, because remember, it is full drive-by-wire. There's no cable on here. It's not the system like the 3UZ-FE VVT-i where you used to have the cable on there, but it's attached to a pedal position sensor, etc. Full drive-by-wire. Press the pedal. It should rev up. If it does, drive-by-wire system is working as we expect it to. Next up is going to be oil control valves. So we're going to use the OBD2 machine to activate both oil control valves. We do it one at a time. And effectively what it does is it advances and retards the cam timing. So it's going to sound super lumpy when it does it. So hopefully you'll hear it in the background as we test bank 1 and then we test bank 2 after that. Once we've done that, I'm then going to go over and I'm going to test all of the injectors and coils. What I mean by that, basically, I want to make sure that they're all firing. So I'm going to literally pull off each injector one by one. The engine should start misfiring, and that'll tell us that every single cylinder is firing exactly as we expect it to. The reason I don't disconnect the coils is basically with the 3UZ, the ECU picks up when there's a coil unplugged and it misfires, and it actually shuts off the injector relating to that cylinder until you then switch off the ignition and back on again. So if I disconnected all the coils, obviously we'd just be running each cylinder down one by one until there was no cylinders left or it died. Once you've done that, we're going to come back and look at 2 things on the dash over here, and that is going to be our tacho or rev counter signal, and we're going to look at our coolant temperature over there and make sure that that is showing some display on there to make sure that my coolant temp and my tacho wire there are correct. Once we've done that, then we're going to go through the diagnostics. I'm going to show you exactly what you can and can't do, obviously what information you can get from there, and other little tips and tricks in terms of doing diagnostics. So let's jump into the ignition part, and to start that, I'm going to have to put the ignition on. So if you bear with me while I just put the camera down over here. Just move that down over there. Right, so all I'm basically doing is taking the black with the red wire here and literally giving it 12 volts. Right, so hopefully, fingers crossed, you've seen, we've got our check engine light over there, LED on the fuse box, we've got our battery light, and we've got our oil light over there. So those are all the things we wanted to test first of all. Really nice and simple and straightforward. What we'll do now is we'll pop over to our OBD2 machine. I'm just going to swap hands with the camera here, so it's a bit shaky. Right, so as you can see there, we've got 27 degrees, 18 degrees, intake air temperature, etc. Obviously, ambient temperature is not connected on that one. So you can see we've got all the live data from the ECU. So we are actually picking up the ECU via the OBD2 port. As I said, we're going to jump straight onto actually testing the fuel pump. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate the fuel pump from the ECU. Okay. And as I do that, you're going to hear the relay click for number one. Secondly, you're going to hear the pump working actually in the drum there. So bear with me a second while I do that. So 3, 2, 1. You can hear the relay click there, and you can actually hear the pump running hopefully in the drum over there. So next step, just going to turn that off. Brilliant. Okay. Right. So all I'm going to do now is we want to test the brake switch. So I need to give the white with the blue wire 12 volts. But first of all, just to eliminate all the useless information that's over here, I'm just going to quickly grab up what I need to get. So basically, yeah, we're just looking to supply that with 12 volts. And again, as I said, because the system works with 2 signals for the brake, we've taken care of that via the relay that we have inside the fuse box there. So effectively what I'm looking for is ST1. ST1 is basically indication that the brakes are not pressed. And then ST stoplight switch is basically an indication that the brakes are being pressed. Now, obviously the way that the ECU sees it effectively is that when ST1 is connected, so when the ST1 does not have 12 volts, it shows as being on. And then when you connect the relay, when you connect the relay, ST1 and stoplight switch should go on, and that's saying that they are both working exactly as we expect them to. So now that I've got those 2 pieces of information correct, so nice and simple, all I'm basically going to do is provide this with 12 volts. As you can see now, it's saying the stoplight switch and ST1 negative are off. As I touch that, you can hopefully hear the relay click. So I'm just going to do it again. And you can hear the relay click, and you'll see ST1 goes from being off to on, and STP goes from being off to on. Fantastic. Okay. Right. So that's the brake switch working. So I'm super happy with that. Now what we're going to want to do is we want to go into system select, and now we want to check the gearbox. Now, interesting fact, obviously, with this 3UZ 6-speeds, when it comes to diagnosing or using it like a OBD2 machine on it, they actually split the gearbox and the engine into 2 different sections. So you normally on a 5-speed, you'll see it says engine and ECT. You'll see this one actually says now ECT separately from engine, and obviously cruise control as well. But we want to go to ECT now, because now we're going to look at the gearbox selector switch. So we want to go back into data list. And as I said, what we're basically going to be looking for now is we are going to be looking for the gear position. So it's going to be park, reverse, neutral, and drive. And then also we're going to be looking for the signals in relation to shift up, shift down, and going into manual mode. So you'll see down here at the moment, you see it's in park, it sees that. We're then going to go into reverse, we're going to go into neutral, then we're going to go into drive. Then we're going to have the sports mode selection switch. It's going to come active when I touch the blue with the red wire at 12 volts. Then shift up, shift down will become active when I touch the orange and the yellow wire with a ground. So let's start with that. So all I'm going to do is basically move the selector switch there. And as I do, we're going from park to reverse. You can see reverse there. Back to, or up to neutral. And the last one, which is drive. Okay, so you can see I've got drive down at the bottom there. Right, so next up, I'm going to touch the blue with the red with 12 volts. As soon as I do that, you're going to see sports mode selection switch turns to on. And as I let go, it turns to off. And then now I'm going to take the yellow wire and touch that to ground. And you'll see that shift up is now on. And as I let go, it goes off. I'm going to take the orange wire and touch it to ground. And you'll see that shift down becomes on. And as I let it go, shift down becomes off. Right, so that is fantastic. So basically that means all the gearbox signals that the customer can supply to the vehicle are wired correctly, and are they going to the correct wire. So as I said, just a little hint, the blue red gets 12 volts, put it into sport/manual mode. The yellow and the orange are the shift up, shift down, and they require an earth. Okay, so just bear that in mind. Don't supply those with 12 volts. They need an earth for that, okay? But it is written in your instructions over there, nice and big and clear for you as well. Right, so basically, as you can see, I've got no coolant temperature on the dash there. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna start the engine up, let it run for a little bit so we can get some coolant temperature on the dash, nip back, and then we'll do all of those running tests over there. So I'll see you in a second. Right guys, so now we're back and ready. As I said, I warmed up the engine so we can see some coolant temperature on the gauge over there, and you can see there, yep. Right, so quick recap of what we're going to be doing. Starter circuit, making sure it only starts in park or neutral. ACIS, making sure the valve closes at the back. Drive-by-wire test, revving it up with the pedal. Oil control valve test, testing both oil control solenoids. Jetter's coils, pulling one out each at a time, making sure it misfires. Tacho, coolant temp, which you've already seen, and then we'll go through diagnostics. Okay, so basically, first thing we want to do is obviously put it into park. So, yep, that's in park now. Now I'm going to move it to reverse. Right, so that is now reverse, okay? So, as I said, because it's not in park or neutral, the car should not start. So let's go and try and do that. And you can see that I'm giving it 12 volts and absolutely nothing is happening at all. Now I'm going to move it back to park. I'm going to put my ear defenders on, so bear with me a second while I do that. So let me just put the camera down. Okay. Rightio. So now that I've moved it back into park, let's go ahead and start her up. 1, 2, 3. Fantastic. Right, okay, so let's go look at our ACIS valve, and you can see that that has gone down. So that is perfect, exactly what we wanted to see. Let's do our drive-by-wire test. So we're just going to rev the car. Perfect. Right, let's move over to our oil control valve test. So again, we are going to pop over to our machine over here. We are going to go into active test. We're going to go into VVT system bank 1, hit enter, and let's give it a go. Right, let's go to bank 2 now. System bank 2, enter that test. Okay, so that's our oil control valve done. Let's move over to injectors and coils. So we'll start here with cylinder number 1, cylinder number 3, cylinder number 5, cylinder number 7, go to cylinder number 2 underneath here, number 4, number 6, and number 8. Rightio. There you go, that one also seems to be playing around. Okay, so that's all our injectors and coils tested out, so we're happy with that. Pop over here, we can see we've got a tacho signal. Let me give it a rev. So that's working exactly as we expected to, so that's absolutely great. We've got our coolant temperature displaying over there. That's perfect. Obviously we still have our check engine light on, but our battery light and our oil light have gone off, so super happy with that. And what I'm going to do now is quickly disconnect the ignition. Okay. Right, so let me quickly put the camera down. Just bear with me a second. Right, I'm going to put the ignition back on again. Rightio, so we need to do that so we can go ahead and look at all the data on the OBD2 machine over there. Righty-ho. Okay, so let's just straighten up the camera again. Whoa. Okay, so looking at our machine over here, I'm back in the engine department. Now, as you can see, the check engine light was on. okay, even when the engine was running. Now, obviously, we haven't got the gearbox connected, so that's what we should be looking to see right now. So as I'm still in the engine department, I'm going to go over and look at the diagnostic trouble codes. Now, what you'll notice is we've remapped all the codes out in relation to the engine for things like secondary Lambda sensors, so the ones after the main ones, after the catalytic converters. Obviously, the evap system is all gone as well, so you've got basically no codes in relation to the engine. And as I said earlier, the systems are split into two with the 6-speed. So you do actually split the engine and the electronically controlled transmission into two. So I'm going to go over to the electronically controlled transmission, and you'll have a look there that there is our 3 codes for the solenoid. And clearly we have not got our solenoid plug connected. So that is exactly what we're looking for. But clearly we've got only the solenoid codes. And again, that is also something we're looking for. So there's nothing else there that is causing us issues in relation to that. Okay. So, diagnostics. Number 1, as I said in the beginning in relation to telling you what wires go where, red wire to permanent 12-volt supply. I cannot stress that enough, because if you don't, the ECU is going to reset every single time that you turn the key off if you connect that to an ignition 12-volt source, okay? It's going to make diagnostics incredibly difficult, because every time you want to read the codes, you turn the key off, you go to read the codes, there's no codes, and it's going to infuriate you to the ends of the earth. So please remember to connect that to 12 volts permanent, just so that you have that down there. Next up, you can't just bridge the terminals in the OBD2 port in order to flash the check engine light. So as I said before, on the European models of 3UZ and the US models of 3UZ, and also the 1UZ VVT-i models of 3UZ, that little trick where you can bridge trouble codes and earth on the OBD2 port is not a functioning thing on those ECUs, okay? American and US. Sorry, American and European. Japanese, yes, you can do it on Japanese ECUs, but those, as far as I'm aware, the only ones that are able to actually do it. So you have to use a proper OBD2 machine in order to communicate with the ECU. That also brings me on to a point. If you guys are using these 6-speed engines in swaps, the one nice thing about it is, for instance, you can buy the Haltech dash that interfaces with OBD2. Well, they require OBD2 that has CAN protocol, and these do. So these make, if you are wanting to put a digital dash in your car and you have a choice of any of the UZs, this might be one that is worthwhile considering, because again, we can take the CAN data to a Haltech dash and display all that information, and you just need to use a dash that is able to read the OBD2 protocol, okay? And this will allow you to do that. All right. So obviously, this will give you all your live data. This will give you all of your codes. Without this, you ain't going to be getting anywhere, and you're going to be stabbing in the dark if you are having issues, okay? So bear in mind. Second thing with the diagnostics, what I would like you guys to, when you are doing your swaps, I've shown this many times before, but if you take a look at your selector over here, you'll see there's an elongated hole over there, and that means that there is adjustment like this on the actual gearbox itself of the selector. The reason is that basically what can happen is you can put the shifter into D, whatever shifter you're using, and usually there's a metal rod that connects your shifter, or sometimes cable depending on your setup. And what can happen is the ECU can lose the signal for drive or park or reverse or neutral or whatever it is, and then the ECU doesn't think it's in any gear. This can cause issues in terms of driving. So you do need to make sure with a diagnostics machine, exactly like you saw me do, that basically when it's in drive, that drive is shown as active on the OBD2 machine, so you can see that live data, okay? One quick and easy way to do it is actually with reverse, because you've got the reverse wire in there, so you know when the selector's in reverse, so you can put that on there. If you don't get 12 volts on there, then you need to adjust that until you do. What you can also do, what I always advise people to do, is actually to get in, make sure the gear is showing on your machine, or however you want to do it, and then literally boot it, because then you're putting the engine under maximum torque, which is going to twist the engine to its maximum. And if the rod or cable moves enough to cause that selector to go out of range and for the signal to disappear to the ECU, then you'll know about it, and you can adjust it and keep doing it, adjust it and keep doing it until no matter what circumstance you put the vehicle through, that signal for the ECU stays in place and doesn't lose it. Super important with that as well. All right. Now then, we do still give the TC or trouble code wire on the OBD2 port, and that's because although you can't flash the check engine lights to read codes that way, that doesn't mean that you can't check timing, okay? So as I've done many times before in videos, you'll see there you've got 0, 5, 10, and 15 degrees. In my case, I have marked the crank pulley with a bit of white paint over there so you can very clearly see it. But basically you can bridge TC and ground, so basically 13 and 4, 5. I think 5 is directly above 13, so that makes it nice and easy if you want to bridge them. It'll then lock the timing at 10 degrees, put a timing light on cylinder 1 coil, and check your timings at 10 degrees. It means you can check the timing without pulling the covers off, and you can see that what the ECU is putting out is correct, okay? So that way you can check the timing on there, and if it is out, you can obviously pull these 2 covers off, check the timing there and make sure it's correct. Please do bear in mind as well, these crank pulleys do have a rubber part to them. They can actually move over the years, so if it is a very old pulley, don't always be 100% trusting of where that is. Obviously, there are proper timing marks behind the crank pulley on the block, but that does require the removal of pretty much the entire front section. So do bear that in mind, that if it's reading about 1 or 2 degrees out and you pull these 2 covers off and everything looks absolutely fine, that it may actually be that the pulley has moved on the rubber mounting a little bit. And so therefore I would then probably pull that off and check that before you go ahead and start changing anything. Okay, now then, if you do bridge that, as I've just told you, it's going to lock the timing at 10 degrees. So you really don't want the engine to be locked at 10 degrees. You're going to have absolutely no power. It's going to be rubbish to drive. So please make sure that if you are doing that, make sure that once you are done, you remove paper clip, wire, hair clip, whatever you've used to bridge those 2 terminals, make sure that you do remove that. Okay. All right, but hopefully that's nice and straightforward for you guys. If you have any questions, please let me know. Obviously, hopefully this is easy for the customer to install now. We've gone through everything where everything plugs in. If you guys are interested in something like this or would like more information, please, you can get in touch with us. Either comment down below and we'll give you our contact details, or you can find us at phoenixenginemanagement.com, which will direct you to our Facebook page, which will give you all of our contact details there. I said it before in a video, obviously there are, just in the 3UZ European and US models alone, obviously there's 6 variations of LS, GS, and SC, and then there's differences between European and US. So when you guys are giving us information, you do need to give us as much information as possible. Preferably, if you've got a photo of an ECU with a part number, then I get all the information I need. Then obviously that is very super helpful. If you can send that over, then I know exactly what we're working with and we'll be able to help you much more speedily. But thanks for watching, guys. As always, we will see you again soon. If you've liked it, hit like. If you want to see more of this stuff, obviously you can subscribe. We'll be doing these videos all the time as the harnesses go out. So you can see there's another harness over there that's going to be done. There's another harness on that table over there that's halfway through done. Right, so those will be coming up next. But thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Never break, always fight, never quit, do it right, play the game, win it life, have no shame, there's no time, feel the pain, live the grind, I could change, in my mind, pick a lane, commit and climb, the only way to win it life, I never